Okay, and I'll be answering the question in the background, so Jeffrey can be focus on the presentation, and then we'll have a live Q&A at approximately about an hour into the presentation. Okay, and many of you having typing questions right now. I'll do my best to answer this as we go out throughout the webinar. And if your question's not answered, again, but be sure to type it again during our Q&A session, because as you're typing it in, sometimes the questions run off the screen. All right, so we're definitely having a full house here. We had several hundred people register for this webinar, and we're definitely great, very, very happy to see so many of you being on this webinar today. So Jeffrey, just do one final check. Are you all set? So we can get.
I believe I'm all set at this point.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Oh, some folks are saying that they can't see the slide. They can't see the screen. Just want to do one final check. Can everybody see the screen? It says how to get a meeting with, type in yes. Okay, great. All right, I see 100. Okay, great. The screen is already flowing. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, Jeffrey. And like I said, I'll just do a quick introduction and some basic housekeeping, and then I'll turn the floor over to you. Okay.
All right.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Alex. I'll be moderating this webinar today on how to get a meeting with C-level executives, business celebrities, and investors without cold calling. And of course, our presenter and also our expert is Mr. Jeffrey James. And we'll be going for about an hour or so, and then there'll be a live Q&A at the end of this presentation as well. And then we definitely want to encourage all of you to stay until the end of the webinar, because we'll be making a really, really great special announcement. And if you have any questions, definitely type into the chat box. I'll be moderating that call. I'll be moderating the questions that are coming in, and then we'll also have a live Q&A calls at the end as well. So at this point, Jeffrey, I want to turn the floor over to you, because since you're the man of the hour, everybody here to see what you have to share.
It sounds great. First of all, I want to thank everyone for attending. I know many of you have corresponded with me in the past or seen my blog posts or the articles I've written and subscribed to my newsletter, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to talk to some of you a little more directly about some of the, I think, more important work that I've been doing recently. So next slide. Here's what I'm going to be covering. First, I want to explain to you why email and not email marketing, and that's a very different thing, as you'll see, is the best way to reach VIPs, C-level execs, business celebrities, investors. And I'm also going to give you some really valuable tips on the 5 reasons that your emails are open or discarded. And these are going to be tips that you can use today. And as soon as you get off, you'll be able to use them. Then I'm going to tell you how I personally ended up getting meetings with Bill Gates, Michael Dell, Larry Ellison, just using email, and kind of the techniques relative to that, and how it applies to other areas. And then I'm going to tell you finally about how you and I can collaborate together to get to apply my 5-step system, which I'm going to be describing, to get a meeting with almost anybody. So it's going to be a very cool session. It's going to have stuff you can use right now, and it's going to give you a pointer for some cool ideas of stuff to do in the future. So now, I want to ask you a question. This is for you, just a second. This is for you. If you're in business and development and sales, this webinar is for you, and you need to make decision makers and execs. It's for you if you need to secure meetings with media executives, like if you're trying to get media coverage and you're being blocked, you're not getting through to people who will give you publicity. It's for if you need to get meetings with thought leaders, people who you want to endorse your work, who you think might be able to connect you with other people who would be valuable to your career and your business. And it's also if you need to reach out to investors who can fund your startup or bring your business to its next level. And it's especially for you if you really hate cold calling, because this method of setting up meetings requires 0 cold calling. I never cold call. I haven't cold called for a decade, and I get a lot of meetings, as you'll see. So now, let me give you some questions. Next slide. Have you ever gotten the runaround? That's when you're trying to get a hold of someone, and you talk to this person, and you talk to the admin, and then you leave a voicemail, and then you send an email, and you do all this stuff, but you're not, kind of feel like you're not getting anywhere. I don't know if that's happened to you. Have have you ever have you been cast into voicemail hell? That's what I call it, when you get bounced from person to person and you leave a message with this person and you don't know whether it's going to get answered or even listened to, or maybe someone's voicemail box is full. And next slide. And have you ever tried to get some media buzz going and just like run into a brick wall? No one wants to talk to you. No one's interested. No one knows, you got some great ideas you want to communicate, but no one's going to listen to you. And of course, a situation where, next slide, you waited forever for an email response. You sent an email out that you thought was important and that you thought was essential, but you ended up not getting anything back. You're just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Well, you are not alone. You are not alone, because it has never been, next slide, it has never been more difficult to meet and connect with executives, decision makers, people in the media, investors, and thought leaders in general. They are just too busy to talk to anyone who they don't already know. It's just harder than it ever was before. Next slide. Now, what does it mean when you can't get the meetings? What does it mean to you when you can't get the meetings that you want? Well, if you're developing a business or you're in sales, it means you're going to have, at best, have roller coaster sales and maybe just downhill racer sales. Because if you can't get meetings, you can't set things up. Let's say you're trying to get your business some publicity or some media buzz, get some exposure. You don't get it if you can't get through to the people involved. Let's face, you want an endorsement from a thought leader. You don't even show up on their radar. I know this because in some areas I'm a thought leader and people try to get through to me and they fail because they don't know how to communicate to someone who's really busy and who does the sort of things that I do now. And if you're a startup, your startup either never gets off the ground or ends up not getting the funding that you need to take it to the next level. These are very, very common things that happen to a lot of people. And now, I want you, though, to imagine, next slide, I want you to imagine, how would your life be different? How will it be different when you can get a meeting with almost anybody? Because I will tell you, it is not just possible, it is fairly easy if you know the secret, if you know how to do it. So now, I'm going to start with something that I usually don't. Everyone who's seen my, read my blog or seen my newsletter knows that I don't talk about myself much, just not that into it. But I didn't always do what I did. I was at one point just sort of worked in a cubicle farm, in engineering and marketing. Yeah, I'm a sale or two, helped on some sales, but basically I was just sort of a corporate dweeb. I made a good salary, great benefits, got to travel a lot, but then I ran across, but now my life is very different than it was then. Let me tell you where I am now. This is where I am now. I've, for the past 20 years, had a six-figure income. I work about a 6-hour day. I have a 5-day work week, just 6 hours a day, 5-day work. I think I get more done than most people who work much longer hours, by the way. I have plenty of intellectual stimulation because I'm always in touch with people. And I have freedom with who I want to work with. And I've got the home office, which I'm sitting in right now, which is in what I consider paradise, which is in the hill on top of the hill in the woods in beautiful New Hampshire. I've got plenty of time to spend with my family, and I pursue interesting hobbies. So even though I enjoy what I do for work, it doesn't dominate my life by any means. I'm making great money doing it. But that wasn't always how it was. Like I said, back I used to be just another corporate dweeb, and then something happened that changed my life. And this is what happened. I got fired. Now, it wasn't quite as dramatic as the picture. It was a series of layoffs. I volunteered for one of the layoffs and then found out I was actually on the list. So it wasn't like it came as a total surprise. But so I needed to figure out what I was going to do. And most people in that situation go out and they start, they brush up their resume and they look for another job. But I had this totally crazy idea. I was going to ask the world's most successful people how to become more successful. That was my crazy idea. I wasn't going to go look for a job. I wasn't going to do any of that other stuff that most people do. I was just going to get a hold of the most famous CEOs and ask them what it takes to be successful. Now, here's what my situation was at that point. Make it totally clear. At that point in my life, next slide, I had worked for two huge companies, Fortune 500 companies that had failed so badly that anyone who worked for them had a stigma attached to them. All of my contacts had been laid off or were hanging on for dear life, so none of them were of any value at all. Almost all of them were in the same boat I was. All my technical and political knowledge, everything I knew about the products, everything I knew about the way those companies worked, everything I knew, all the connections, all the, just my understanding the way business worked, had been rendered completely useless because those companies were going out of business. And even my friends, I told my friends what I was going to do. I said, hey, I'm going to get the CEOs to, I'm going to talk to them and find out be successful. And they were like rolling their eyes and saying, look, Jeff, no one's going to talk to you. Why would they want to talk to you? And they had a point, because actually I had no idea of how I was going to get to meet these people. I really didn't. I just thought it was a great idea. You need the next bullet on that. I really had no idea. I had no idea. But I did have one thing going for me, kind of like this crazy optimism that I believed that anything was possible. So what I did was I went out and asked people who did this sort of thing for a living, who met, interviewed, and worked with top CEOs, top VIPs, and I asked them, how do you do it, what do you do? And I built the germ of a system that I've worked on now. I worked then, and I worked on now, and I've really refined it so that it is very consistent. And I call it the insider system. Some of you, like the subscribers to the newsletter, or I call it the Jeffrey James Insider newsletter. I call it that because of the insider system, which I have never before revealed to anybody. Just so you know, you are hearing this for the first time, other than a few clients that I've shared it very privately with. Now, I've written about pieces of it in my blog, but this is really the first time I've ever let anyone other than a very few number of clients in on how I do this. So let me tell you how to work. What happened though to me when I went off and built the insider system. Next slide. I got to meet some pretty important people. I was able to get interviews with some of the top CEOs, gurus, teachers. You might know Guy Kawasaki there, who encouraged me to go in this direction of doing this webinar. Same thing with Linda Richardson. You might not recognize her face, but she founded the world's largest sales training firm. And she mentored me and explained to me what I needed to do and how I could be of most value using the system. So I've been able to get through to many, many people who would be inaccessible. Probably when you got up a list of several hundred people who I've talked to. So, and what's more important though, it's not me that's doing this. It's the fact that I'm using the system. Here's one of my clients. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. I also have gotten a lot of coverage, and this was coverage where I had to email someone and say, "Are you interested in this?" It was the same process of the insider system to get me connected with media outlets that have either published things I've written, blog posts, musings, or they've covered me as a story in and of itself. So this is all because of the insider system. All just made my life easy, made my life so easy, and that's why I can kind of live it the way I want now. But more importantly, it also works for other people. There's one of my clients. He's a pharmaceutical consultant, recruiter, and what he does is he connects very highly skilled people in the pharmaceutical industry to big pharmaceutical companies. So every one of his phone calls to get to someone who's a hiring manager is worth, it's a 5-figure deal that he's working on. and he was using emails to get through to people, and he was getting almost no responses, not even a response back. He wasn't even getting people to open them. I exposed him to the system, and he is getting 9 out of 10 of his emails responded to. So this is actually, he was one of the first clients I worked with. This is when I first realized and became entirely certain that it was the system that was making this work, and not me personally. It does work. So now, let me tell you a little bit about the Insider system, so you understand about it. But first, before you understand it, I have to give you the background of why it works, because if you don't understand the context, then it won't make sense why this is such a powerful concept. Next slide. Cold calling was already getting more difficult because of voicemail. But at least voicemail, even if you got in voicemail hell, still sort of worked. But now voicemail is starting to go away. Phone companies are finding that people aren't retrieving their emails. They just leave them, their voicemails, they leave them alone. Millennials aren't even using it. They're texting and emailing. Coca-Cola, one of many companies, no longer supports voicemail. It's a total movement away from voicemail, and it makes a lot of sense because voicemail is a very long-winded way of communicating compared to email. So it's not surprising at all that companies are starting to do that. So what's replacing cold calling is the way people set up meetings. Meetings may take place on the telephone or in person, but it's not done by phone. You don't set up meetings by phone anymore. You set up meetings by, next slide, email. And email is just becoming the way everyone gets work done. They do sometimes and often set up phone meetings or personal meetings using email, but spontaneous phone calls where you just call once a month like cold calling, that just doesn't happen anymore. In fact, so many people now have just got a mobile number and are doing everything on their mobile. And remember, you can't use it's illegal to use auto dialers with mobile, so it makes it very difficult to cold call mobiles anyway. And there's other legal restrictions. So it's all email, and then the meetings are set up, and then the meetings take place as scheduled events. So where is email? Is kind of it. This one absolutely fascinates me. People used to think about email as something that happened at work, but now that we've got smartphones, it's happening everywhere. People are reading their email while they're on the phone. In fact, this may come as a surprise to some of you, but there are even people who are reading email while they're listening to this webinar. I just think that's probably the case. People do that. Half of the people in business, half of them, will do email on their phone during an actual meeting, a face-to-face meeting. People do when they're watching TV. It's all over the place, whatever they're doing. Weekends, evenings, middle of the night. 1 out of 5 people do email while they're driving, which is absolutely insane. I hope they pull off the road because that's like worse than drunk driving, but it is amazingly popular. It's because everyone is now doing everything on email and doing it all the time. And again, I'm going to show you why this makes this system work and why it's different from the other kinds of systems that you want. Now, that sounds great. Hey, they're using all the email. We can just email them, and we'll be able to get a meeting because they're always on email. But here's the problem. Next slide. And it's a huge problem. The number of emails, business emails, is doubling every 4 years. And that's for the same number of workers. So if you're getting 200 emails a day today, in 4 years you'll be getting 400 emails a day. And 4 years after that, you'll be getting 800 emails a day. And it's just been continuing like that. And as a result, everyone has a flood of email, and they're using tools to filter them out. They use spam filters, but mostly they just use their own brains to filter out what's important and what's not. And that's what we're going to be using in the system to our advantage, as you'll see. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean that they're doubling every year? So what does it actually mean? Here's how it looks today. 1%, next slide. 1% is the average response rate for unsolicited emails. So if you send 100 emails out to 100 people, one of them will get a response on average. Now, that sounds, oh, that's not too bad. Gee, 1 out of 100. So if I mail 1,000, I'll get 10. It doesn't sound that bad, but the response, next slide, is not necessarily yes. In fact, it's often no. So this isn't the success rate. It's the rate of which someone did anything. The actual success rate is much smaller than that. In fact, a business owner confided in me recently that he spent $15,000 to pay. He paid an email marketing company to generate 50,000 supposedly qualified leads. He hit them with 3 email blasts. He got 500 total opens, not just people opening it. That's all from all that effort, and got 0 meetings out of it. So I want to put yourself into this guy's shoes. How would you feel if you put up $15,000 and got 0 out of it? And I will tell you, this happens all the time. And you're going to know by the end of this webinar why it happens, and you're going to know a different way that works better. So let me explain why that kind of email marketing doesn't work. Here's the strategy. And I tell you, I have seen this over and over and over. So someone goes out and buy or build a big list of prospects, and then they send out a bunch of email blasts to them. And each email blast starts out with enthusiasm. Oh, I'm so glad to be able to tell you about our new products. And then it goes on with it describing, oh, we have this feature and this function, and it's wonderful, and we're wonderful. And then it crams all this information in so that, because you figure you only got one chance if they open it, you want to cram everything possible into the email. And then it usually has you assign some homework. Go read this ebook. Go get this. Go over here. Do this. Do that. And then it says, and what time are you available? I can see you next week. They ask for a meeting as if all that stuff somehow compelled someone to have a meeting or want to have a meeting. And then the line that just kills me says, it just kills me. As please don't hesitate to call for more information, like you haven't already dumped a bunch of information on their head already. That's just crazy. And this is what you end up looking like. Next slide. This is the sort of thing that happens all the day. This is an example, and it's edited from a real example. And I honestly get one of these every 15 minutes or so, something like this. A big, blocky, ugly piece of text with a bunch of words and a bunch of stuff, and I just delete it. That's what happens. I just don't even. Usually I don't even open it, because the part I really only see is the part up at the top, which shows up in my inbox, and I just go, oh, no, I don't want to. That's not interesting. I don't even look at them. If it opens up with, and I will be explaining to you why I don't open them and why most people don't open them. But this is the typical thing that people send, and this is why they get those abysmal response rates. So that's the email marketing way. That's the way email marketing does it. Let me explain how to really do it so it works. This is the insider system. I'm going to explain at the end why I call it the insider system, by the way, so you want to hang on for that. You find out what the other person wants. Now that may take a lot of research and a lot of acumen and a lot of imagination. You find out, you research, you decide what it is that person actually wants. Then in about one sentence, you say how you can help, and then you ask a yes or no question. that puts you into a conversation, an online conversation with the VIP, trading emails maybe once, twice, 3 times. That naturally transitions into a meeting, and then in the meeting you close the opportunity, depending on the product or what you're selling. This is the insider system. This is why I can live the way that I live. This is why I always get responses when I want to talk to people, as this insider system. Now, you might notice that I put a little thing here, the initial email, because we're going to kind of be concentrating on that piece of it during the rest of the webinar, because the whole system requires research and acumen and looking at sales process and some other things that are a little bit beyond what you can teach in a single webinar. And it's very important to me that I leave you with some tips and techniques that you can apply immediately. And that's the part, the initial email part, is where I'm most likely to be able to help you quickly right now on that particular aspect of it. So let's get kind of a little deeply into this. Let me show you what a beginning email might look like, an initial email might look like. I'm going to tell apart. You notice it's not a big block of copy. It doesn't have a lot of stuff all over it. It's 3 lines. It's separated by spaces. It's open. And it looks simple, but it's not simplistic. So it looks like, and there's a whole lot of thought that went into every one of these sentences, and I'm going to go through each piece and kind of explain it to you so you understand the logic of how this works. Next slide. So this part is what the VIP wants. Now, that is a result of research to find out that John, the VIP, is putting on a conference in Atlanta, and also research that explains that conference organizers, the big headache for them is always no-shows. People sign up and then they don't come, or they come and then they leave right away. So that's what they want. They want to reduce no-shows. So it says this right up front. That's going to show up in their inbox. They're going to be able to read that. It's going to, yeah, the minute someone sees that says Atlanta, oh, that's about my Atlanta conference, reducing no-shows at the Atlanta conference, that guy's on board at least to read the rest of the email. Next slide. Then we get down to a 1-sentence statement of what you're offering that addresses that issue. Now, believe it or not, that 1 sentence communicates everything important that was in that huge blocky email that we looked at before. So there's a lot of crafting and thinking that goes down to reducing all that complexity into what's really important. To come up with a message that's really important. And then, next slide, a simple yes/no question. And once you set things up like this, so it's a very, very high likelihood that the person is going to say yes. Now notice I didn't say, here's a 1-minute video, or here's a video attached. I said, would you like to see a video? And that's very intentional. It's extremely intentional. I said, ask a yes/no question. And I'm going to explain why that's intentional and why that's so important. It's because, next slide, what you are fishing for is not a meeting, not homework to watch something. You want 5 taps. That's all you want. The lowest bar to getting into a conversation with the VIP. You want them to hit the reply button, YES send. You want that 2 seconds where they can indicate interest. Now let me explain to you what happens when you get those 5 taps, because it's pretty incredible. Next slide. It's unbelievable. Those 5 taps are wins. First, you're now in a conversation. You're not in a meeting, but you're going back and forth. You're in an email conversation with the person that you want to communicate with. You've also obtained permission to sell. In this case, permission to show them a 1-minute video, which is a sales video about the product. They just gave you permission to do it. Then you're now whitelisted on their spam filter. So any further communications will just go right through. They won't get caught by the spam filter. It will just get sorted back and get in the real email box. Fourth, and this is probably the most important, anyone who's been in sales knows that getting your first yes is the best. It's like yeses are a series. Winning a sale, getting someone on the phone, getting a media person. You want to start the yeses rolling. That's your first yes. And just as important, the fifth point, you're building momentum on the relationship. By 2 seconds, that 2-second time, just reply. YES sent. Boom, boom. You got 5 wins. You're on your way. It's so crucial that it's just amazing. It's just amazing what happens. So here's an example of a couple people who did this 5-tap method. Now, like I said, there's more to it than this, and right now they're just getting a response, but these are people who just used the 5-tap method, that piece of it. That piece alone will get you more responses to your emails. Now, it might not get you the yes responses you want, and it might not get you into the actual meetings that you want or being able to close the meetings, but it will get you more responses, just that method. So I want to emphasize, next slide, that we've really just this time talking about this little part in the center, the initial email. And to really make the system work, you have to address all 5 of these. How you take it all the way from understanding the VIP to closing the opportunity. But again, in this webinar, I'm only focusing on the initial email part because that's the easiest part to understand and to communicate at this level. So, one of the things I promised you up front was the 5 reasons emails get opened. Next slide. This is what appears in your inbox. This is what an email looks like. I kind of broke out each piece. There's a date and time which is connected with when did it come, and that's also when they're most likely to have read it, because people check their emails all the time, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. So that is when it's actually hitting the person, when they're getting it. So people see it. If they're going to see it, it's got to be there at the right time. They're going to look at who it's from. They're going to look at the subject and say, well, is this interesting to me? They're going to look at the salutation, and that's actually, the salutation says more about you than it does about them. And they're going to look at the first line of your email, which I call the teaser. Now they are going to go through, that's going to hit their head in just, next slide, they're going to give that 2 seconds of consideration. That's how long they're going to decide whether they're going to look at the email, whether they're going to open it or not. So they just kind of do this all automatically. So what you want is for each one of those to be as good, as powerful as possible, because that way you're much more likely to get your email open. So I'm going to give you now five powerful tips to get your emails open, and they're based on these elements right here. First, send it during off hours. Now, there's been a lot of research actually it's done with email marketing, on when to send emails to get responses. And the research says work days from 8 to 10 a.m. or 4 to 5 p.m. And you get like a 6% more opens that way. But you know what's funny about that research? They only bothered to email during work days. It's like they haven't figured out that all that email activity is going on everywhere. And I'll tell you, my experience says you're going to get a response if you do not do it when you're at work, when they're at work. You want to hit them on some of the times that I found work best are Saturday afternoons, Sunday afternoons, Saturday morning about 11 o'clock. A lot of people kind of ramp up and do a little bit of work. 10 o'clock at night. You just want to get there when because people are checking their email all the time. You want to get there at some point where they're not being swamped by a bunch of other stuff. Next one. Next tip. I have seen many emails that asking for a meeting starting with this. So-and-so suggested I contact you. And they think that that's good. I suppose it's better than saying, just jumping into something. But if Jane actually suggested that, why not get her to send the email? Because if she sends the email, then he's going to recognize it, the recipient's going to recognize it as coming from someone who the recipient knows, and that's going to make it much more likely to be open. So don't be satisfied with so-and-so suggested I call. Number 3, next one. I remember I told you that that the salutation is important. You want this email to kind of feel as if it came from inside the company. Now, you're not lying about it, but you're going to feel that way. And if you say, "Dear Mr. Jones," it immediately means that's a person I don't know. That's how it's interpreted. If it says, "Hi, John," someone I might know, but usually that would be the way if someone you knew from way back or someone you didn't know very well would address you. What you want to go is, boom, first name, John, comma, go into it, because that's how all those internal emails. So remember, we get that 2 seconds where they're deciding whether to open it. You want it to feel as if it's something inside, something that came from inside the company. You're much more likely to get it open there. So, next slide. Next slide. You want to make sure that both the subject and the teaser are about them and not about you. And this is probably the most common mistake, and unfortunately it's the one that takes the most work to get right. It's so easy to talk about yourself and your company and to do a subject line that is about what you're interested in, but it has to be the other way around. The email has to be about them, because that's who they're interested in. They're not interested in you. They're not interested in whether you think what you think about their health. They're not interested about they're not interested in you, period. They're not. They're interested in themselves, and so you've got to make it about them. And that takes thought, because it not only has to be about them, it has to be relevant to them, and it has to be important to them. And that's part of the big work. That's the big work involved in this sort of system. So again, next slide. The email is only part of the system. It has to be in the context of researching and understanding how to transition and close from that. Now, as far as that goes, the system, when it's worked correctly, next slide, can get as high as a 90% positive response rate. Now, your mileage may vary on this, because it may be, you may have a different kind of product, you may have a different kind of demands on you, it might have a different audience. I am accustomed to getting 90% yeses because I use the system, and I have had clients who have gotten that same level of response. Every client I've worked with has doubled the number of positive responses they've gotten. The system really does work. So now, I have an important question for you. Next slide. I want you to ask yourself, how much more money are you willing to lose because you don't know how to do the system? How much more money? And I'm going to give you a little system to figure it out. You can just do this kind of like on the side, on a piece of paper or something. First I want you to write down how much is a meeting potentially worth to you. Well, maybe a meeting with a potential customer, or with a media outlet, or with an investor. Just write that down. Put the first bullet up. And then I want you to write how many of these meetings you'd like to secure per year, and then just multiply the two numbers. Great. Now what I want you to do is I want you to send in comments what that final number was. Put a comment in here in the thing, let it stream, because I want to see what you guys are, what we're talking about here. Yeah, big numbers, all of them. This is important stuff. The ability to secure a meeting reliably and easily is a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big part of whether your company is going to grow and whether your career is going to grow. So let me show you an example. This is an example actually this was an example from one of my clients. It says, how much is a meeting worth? It was $5,000. He wanted to get 8 more of these meetings a year, so it was $40,000 that he was losing per year. Now, I've seen numbers much bigger than that, because I've worked with some clients whose sales are around $100,000 a pop. and being able to get 8 more meetings that turn into business, was you're getting up around $1 million for that particular company. So I want you, if you're trying to secure meeting with meeting person, how much is it costing you not to get coverage? How much is it costing not to get funding? It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a big deal. And so now, next slide, I have another question, probably the most important question that I've ever asked anybody in my webinars and things I've done in the past on my newsletter. Says, are you committed, not interested, are you committed to doing what it takes to acquire this life-changing skill? As this isn't a matter of interest. You can be interested in this. You can take your notes and kind of do the techniques, and it's not, you can do that, but are you committed to really get this life-changing skill? Because if you are, I'm about to invite you to work together, to come with me to secure meetings in your target market regardless of who they are. Now, here's what I'm talking about. Next slide. I want to do a one-on-one meeting with people who I believe I can help do this. That's the URL, businesswisdom.com. And what's on that site is I'll tell you in a second what's on it. I just want you to remember that site. Next slide. Here's what this is. This is for you. You need to click on that URL, get in that URL. If you're in business development, you need to meet decision makers, you need to secure meetings, you need to get meetings with thought leaders, media executives, you need to read it to investors, and you hate cold calling. If that's you and you're committed to getting that better, then here, next slide, here are the outcomes that we're going to get, that we're going to work towards. A stronger marketing message that makes sense to the people who you're trying to sell or interest. We're going to get you more responses, a lot more responses to your emails, which is going to result in more meetings with VIPs. And it's not just going to be meetings, it's going to be higher sales, if that's what you're into, and greater visibility if you're looking for media. Those are the outcomes. That's what comes out of working this system. So now, next slide. You can work with me how we accelerate our success. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We are going to, I have to give a little background on this one. Recently, I announced an elite consulting package. Some of you from the newsletter must undoubtedly remember this. At $25,000, I became your personal marketing advisor for 6 months. Now, many of you were interested in that, but $25,000 was just more than you can afford. So I consulted with my own advisors, the people that I draw on for business experience, to come up with a model where I could help a larger group of people, but with a much smaller investment on their part. So that's how I came up with this, which I call the group implementation model. With this model, you and I first have a one-on-one kickoff meeting to personalize my framework to your situation. During that time, we come up with a specific game plan for your specific needs. Then you'll be added to a small group, 8 to 12 people, where we'll meet twice a month to continue implementing your plan. Even though we'll be in a small group, our interactions will be one-on-one between you and me. I want to emphasize, this is not a course. This is not a class. I'm not going to give you information that you have to absorb. There are working sessions, and the working sessions that is going to get you specific, individualized feedback from me on how to best proceed, and you can provide me updates so I can monitor your progress. It's the same format. This is the same format I use with my high-end consulting clients, and you're getting the same approach, but it's at a fraction of what it costs my high-end clients. Now, I want to emphasize the focus of our time together is and must be rapid implementation. It's not lectures. I don't like lectures. I don't listen to them, and I don't give them. You'll be given some foundational training, but the majority of our time together will be implementing and refining the framework for your situation, not just getting you more information. You see, because knowledge alone doesn't create results, only implementing that knowledge will create results, and that's what I'm offering here. Now, the program runs over 4 months, It's a small fraction of the 25,000 I just announced for the high-end program. And that 25,000 program was invitation only, and this program is too. Even though it's a tiny fraction of 25,000, and I will share more details when we get a chance to meet one-on-one, but based upon what I know about most of you, a single sale will recoup most, or if not all, of the investment in this program. So to see if it's a fit for us to work together, I have to ask you to do something, which is fill out a short questionnaire where I can learn more about your business and then determine if my framework really can help you. Now, I've worked really hard to make this program as accessible as possible, but it has to be a fit for both sides since I'm going to be working with you for 4 months. Now, as I said, I'm pretty sure that most of you on this webinar, single sale or a meeting, will be able to recoup most, if not the entire investment in this program. Now, you can do that, or you can do these things, and these are real life numbers. You can get a half page in a major newspaper. That's going to cost you $7,500 for one ad. You can do a radio spot or TV spot. That's going to cost you $10,000 for one ad. You can hire a professional publicist. Typically, they go for about $5,000 with a 3-month minimum. And I will tell you from personal experience, because I get emails from professional publicists by the dozens every day, none of them know what they're doing. They're clueless. So, you know, regardless, I think it's incredible that anyone pays them anything, frankly. You can go out and hire one of those rainmakers with a Rolodex. That's going to cost you about what it would cost to hire a couple of engineers or something. That's going to be expensive. You can do cold calling. It's money and time wasted. And you can try to do the system from your notes and from what I've already told you, but it's kind of not as easy as it seems, because even though the techniques are simple, executing them requires quite a bit of finesse, understanding how it all puts together and fitting it into the overall an entire process. It's what we used to call non-trivial. It does take work and it takes effort to do that. So that you can try, but I really think you'd be better off doing this. So, and again, next slide. Let's meet. I know, if you have a one-on-one time with me to talk about the individual situation, I guarantee you it'll be interesting because I love hearing. I absolutely love hearing people with problems. Next slide. The questionnaire I ask you to fill out, it's very minimal. It's really minimal. It just allows me to get a track on where you are and kind of whether I can help you or not. It's not a big deal. It should take you only about 5-10 minutes. Although the more time you spend on it, the more productive our time together will be. And so just wanted to let you know what some of the impact I've had on some other people's businesses. Next slide. This is he's an executive in a marketing firm. He had been working for a long time with a single client. He wanted to expand out his personal brand. I worked with him on his messages, on how he was communicating to himself, and was able to bring out the strengths and explain to him the strengths that he had that he didn't even know he had. So now he can communicate those strengths in the emails and follow through into the discussions and the meetings, and follow through again into the actual closing of business. And he does these big marketing packages, soup to nuts marketing packages. So we're talking about a lot of money here, and so this has been a good thing for him. Next slide. And this is a company that puts on super high-end events like NFL parties for CBS. He does these big parties, and yet his message was like everyone else's, and his way of communicating with people was like everyone else's. So I was able to go in and kind of retune him, look at how he was communicating himself, so now he can differentiate himself in a very complicated and a very competitive market. So you can see why people pay $25,000 to be able to do this, because it means, one sale for him more than pays for that. So that's the webinar. That's the offer. I'm wondering I'm sure there's some questions and answers either about the program or about the techniques themselves. So if Alex, I'm sure you've been compiling the questions. Do you have that something for me?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I apologize for the background noise. I've been trying to mute it as much as possible, be in the background. So, just thought you're interested in some of the numbers, Jeffrey, that people were talking about. Like, um, what's the average, value of a meeting, successful meeting?
Hmm.
The numbers on the low end were 50,000, and there's a couple people here. I don't know if this is a typo, but a gentleman basically said, Enzo, if you wanted to clarify this, I'm reading 3B as 3 billion. That sounds a little bit on the high side, but certainly if you're in M&A merger acquisition, I guess that's possible. But the numbers go all the way to like a million, 5 million, a couple people into the, well into the 50, 20, 50 million. So there's some people here doing some pretty large deals. So, but just drop a zero on that. We're still talking about from very large numbers here. So,
Hmm.
that kind of gives you a sense of that. Okay, folks are also talking about 300,000. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Somebody here, folks, it's gonna take me a while. There's hundreds of you here, so I've been trying to answer as quick as I can and also helping move it forward. Somebody here asked, I may not have your name correct here, but I remember seeing a message say, how would this work if you're basically doing this in something like, say, using LinkedIn or Facebook? If they can, if they have somebody's personal ability to contact them, would this system allow them this same psychology, this approach work?
It works the same way. It works using InMail, and I've certainly clients have done that, and I've used InMail. That's LinkedIn product, and in Facebook, there's some people who conduct all their business in Facebook. I probably should have stated that an email could even be like in that format, could even be a series of 3 quick texts. So it's really just, it's not that it has to go through an Outlook email or Gmail or something. Email I'm using in the broad sense of any way that you communicate with 2 people,
Sure.
between 2 people. So yes, it does apply to those environments. Could you move to the next slide, so just in case anybody needs to write down
Sure.
yeah, that's where you get the questionnaire to get a one-on-one discussion with me.
Sure. And folks, the reason we have the one-on-one is because we really want to make sure it's a fit. As Jeffrey said, this is an implementation program. It's not just a bunch of shrink wrap, pre-recorded audio or video, which quite honestly anybody can do. This is really a customized. We're starting with Jeffrey's framework and we're customizing your situation. That's one of the reasons why we have a questionnaire and Jeffrey wants to meet with you. And Enzo did confirm that yes, he is in mergers, acquisition, and real estate, hence the astronomically large number. Okay, Mitch is asking, says, can you help a pre-revenue company? I assume, Mitch, what you mean is you're probably working with a startup. And if you could clarify, Mitch, are you looking to drive sales or basically get funding or both? Because this framework will allow you to get in front of investors and also um, people interested in your product or services as well. So if you can clarify that, Mitch, in the chat box, that'd be great. Let's see. Okay, Patrick is asking, does the training include identification of the VIP? Patrick, I assume you mean like helping you clarify who you should be selling to. I believe the answer is yes, but Jeffrey, you can elaborate on that for Patrick's benefit. That would be
Yes,
great.
yes, actually targeting and figuring out exactly who the right person to get through to
Mhm.
is a whole subgenre of it. And there's actually an easy way to do that with email too. You can triangulate on the right person using this method. It's very amusing, and it always works. So yes, that's good. Also, some of the research, a lot of times when people start with this, they come in, a client will come in and they'll say, well, I really want to get a great email template, but we end up then working on the messaging and the research ahead of time to kind of identify who they should be trying to get a hold of and how they would go about doing it. So it all varies according to your needs. That's the point of doing it this way. That's why I'm not trying to do a class. That's why it's individual consulting in this new group discussion format.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize what Jeffrey just said in case most of you may have missed that. This is the same process that Jeffrey takes with the high-end clients. So this is really consulting and implementation. We're doing it in a way that basically many of you express interest where the $25,000 program wasn't a fit for. So this is, even though it's a group, every one of you is going to get resolution and solutions to your specific situation. The group allows us to leverage that, so that way, you're basically getting what I like to call 80% of the results at, at a fraction of the investment. Let's see. A couple people ask more or less, I think, the same question here, which is, would you give a highlight of how you go about researching what the VIPs want, their target audience? I think John asked this, and then a couple other people asked, some variation of that question as well. I guess like a high-level view of like how do you actually research what the VIP is interested in?
Some of this comes from just being kind of, well, in certain industries, there are career interests and industry-specific interests that they would tend to have, but ultimately it all comes down to what is the personal interests of that person going to be, and some of that and career interests, and a lot of that has to do with just sort of business acumen applied to the business situation. For example, most CIOs are looking to get to be a CEO, and even though you may be trying to sell them an IT package, like some big application that they were going to run on their corporate website, the real agenda for the CIO is almost always to become CEO. So if you position your IT, this is just an example out of which I'm quite familiar, if you position your IT product in a way that makes the CIO seem CEO-like, you will get a much higher response, and they'll jump right on it because that's really what they're going for. So some of it comes from research, some of it's specific to the individual. Often it also helps to get deep, to look up, get beyond the LinkedIn level of a person. You want to look at, where they live, the cities they live in, kind of what their interests are. All these things, the more you understand a particular VIP, the more likely you are to hit on the exact right tone and note that is going to cause them to respond.
Okay, Jeffrey, a couple other questions here. So folks, again, we would encourage you filling out that the application. There's hundreds of you here, and the goal is to really have a small group, and we do want to make sure it's a fit before we go forward. So we can move forward together and make sure that we can get the best results for you. Let's see. Some of you are asking,
we've got about 3 minutes now, so.
Okay, all right. So let's see. Yep, is there a microphone? Okay, let's see, would you directly? Okay, yes, I think somebody was asking here, like, can this work if you're not doing sales? And Jeffrey, I think
yes.
I think we budgeted till 5:15 if your schedule allows that, because there's still a number of questions. Yeah, when we created when we created the webinar, I figured that we'd have we'd have hundreds of people, and I want to give everybody a chance to answer this question here. Okay.
We'll answer all the questions. Yes, in fact, it works very well for just like trying to get media coverage, which isn't sales, or just trying to connect up with people who you think can help you as an individual. It's surprisingly powerful for that. But the reason why I talk a lot about sales is because most people everyone in sales has this problem. And so it's universal in business development and in small companies, but this method works regardless of whether you're actually trying to close a financial sale or just close on meeting someone you'd like to meet.
Sure.
In fact, I'll tell you something. One of the reasons I'm screening is I want to make sure I'm not getting any stalkers, people who want to use it to chase down a celebrity or something. Just so you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this.
Sure. Yeah, so like folks, with great power comes great responsibility, as the old saying goes. Let's see here. Let's see. I think it's pronounced Shikar. It says Shikar is saying, would you go directly to the targeted person, or is it better to take the referral route?
Depends on the situation. It depends on the situation. You have to read whether the referral is valuable enough so that the act of referral is going to get action. Usually it is, if it's someone the person knows, but a lot of times people, they think that social media contacts are real contacts. And just because you're LinkedIn friends with someone or Facebook friends with someone doesn't mean they'll take your call. The real definition of someone who's a good referral is, will the person take their call if they call? Or in other words, or better yet, another way to put it, will they always open an email? Like I have personal friends and business contacts who, anytime I get an email from them, I will open it. And if it was a referral, I would read it. And I have about 20 or 30 people that are on that list who just doesn't. I would just open it automatically, no matter what it said. And that's the kind of referral that you're looking for.
Sure. The answer to this is yes, but I'd like to confirm with you, since one of the things that we'll be covering is how to get meetings with investors, which I think it's Olu. Olu saying, do you work with startup nonprofits, especially in pre-launch phase? What's your experience in this area?
I've certainly worked with a number of unintentionally unprofitable companies. No, I'm making a joke. Yes, it works for nonprofits too. This is actually kind of it's funny how people don't realize that nonprofits involve a lot of selling. And so, yeah, getting people to look at a grant or think about you or about, giving money, that's all part of it too. And yeah, it works. That world is a little bit different because the referrals come at a different level, and we can talk about that. If that's your specific area, we can certainly talk about that one-on-one.
And that's what we will encourage you. You have a really detailed question. Go ahead and fill out the application right there at businesswisdom.com, and then tell us about your situation. And Jeffrey will have a lot more context to really dive deep into this with you. For the sake of time, we can only answer this as quickly as possible because the questions are still stacking up here. We still have hundreds of folks here. Let's see. Okay. Okay. JD is asking, how does the program go to the next step after getting the first yes?
There's actually a specific, after you get the first yes, there's a specific kind of email that you send that includes a little more of the information of what you're doing and which provides the basis for having a meeting. And that varies more greatly. It has a different form than the original. But it's really another set of email that provides a natural segue into having a meeting. Although it must be said that many business deals, and I personally know this to be true, can be concluded just via email without ever having a telephone conversation. And there are many people that do all their business negotiations through email and don't bother ever to talk on the phone. And there's some advantages to doing that. But it's really just it's a different kind of email that segues. It revolves a little more research. You kind of need to know exactly what's going to be the thing that's going to keep them most intrigued. And that varies from situation to situation. I guess I'd say it's not complicated, but it's very specific.
Sure. And again, I mean, like I think what you've been emphasizing is, like I said, it's really dangerous to give kind of like a blanket answer across the situation. There's a framework, but what you want to do is adapt to your personal situation. And some of you like here have deal sizes that vary dramatically by at least one, in some cases 2 or 3 zeros. And so what gentleman was saying earlier, he's in the mergers acquisition versus somebody that may be selling to IT or consulting packages. So there's going to be some nuances there as well. Somebody was asking, you were mentioning earlier that you were going to share like why this is called Inside the System, and if you can elaborate on that.
Yes, I've heard that. Mm-hmm. What it's called Insider System is because the emails are crafted so it seems like you're an insider. So you kind of make yourself look and feel like someone who's an insider with that individual, and that's more likely to get them to open and respond. So one example of that is using the first name, comma, salutation rather than dear or hi, because that makes you seem like you're an insider. And the kinds of subject lines and teasers and questions that you ask all should be flavored and feel as if they're the sort of thing that comes from inside the company or inside the club of people who that VIP belongs to. That's why it's called the insider method.
Thanks for clarifying that. Let's see, Patrick says that my average value is 300,000, maybe, yeah, 300,000 is estimated. So Patrick, this would be, like say, just securing probably a single meeting for you would, make this a almost a no-brainer. Let's see. Yeah, for many of you, I think that's on the low side. Some of you are saying your deal size are into the millions or tens of millions. So definitely this is now I don't want to scare anybody off by by basically big numbers. You don't have to be doing big deals that size. I'm just sharing that this is the feedback that many of you share with here. Somebody's asking like, what's the smallest business you can help? Mitch, Mitch, can you clarify? Do you mean like head count or like the size of the opportunity or the size of the transaction? I suspect you're talking about like maybe the size of the business is in like the number of employees. And I think you're probably referring to yourself. You can clarify that. That would help a lot. And we have about maybe 10 more minutes, folks. So I'm still going through the questions here. Mitch, if you can help clarify that, it would help. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So size. So Mitch, are you talking about the size of your business or the size of the target business? Okay, so Mitch is asking. I suspect you're probably meaning if you're a solopreneur. That's how I'm reading the question, Jeffrey. So would this work for somebody that's maybe yes? Okay, he's a solopreneur. Would this help him? I think that's probably the most succinct way of asking his question.
Well, I've been a solopreneur for a couple of decades, and it's certainly worked for me.
Okay.
Many of my clients, either they may belong to a larger organization, but they function as if they were solopreneurs anyway. Yeah, it works for one person. In fact, it works better in a sense because when you're one person, it keeps people from the tendency to lapse into the we and saying, oh, we do this, we do that, and people are really looking for a personal connection, and they want you personally to take responsibility for something. And so sometimes you're actually stronger coming in as an individual than coming in as the representative of a company. And when you come in as a representative of a company, you got as much as possible keep it into this is about me, and it's about you and how I can help you, not it's about how our company can help your company. And that's not as effective just because it's more abstract. People are more interested in making a real connection. And the insider method is a very good way to create that kind of connection very quickly and inexpensively.
Okay, we're going to be wrapping up here in a couple minutes. Let's see. One is from Billy. Billy saying, how many times should you send the same email to the same VIP? And how long after the initial send before he tries again?
You only send the email once. There are, however, a couple of reminders you can send, but they're formatted a little bit differently. They're not complicated. They're just kind of very sure that you saw this. It's very simple. There's a real structure. And then if you don't get a response after 2 of them, and usually space them out at about 3 or 4 days, when you do what I call a Hail Mary, and or you can, and that's when you know you're not going to do it. Then you do a Hail Mary, or what's often better is just to let it lie for a little bit and then start again after it's gotten off the radar screen and start again with a different message altogether and a different interest point. The one thing you don't want to do is become a pest. That's the main thing. You don't want to do anything that's going to make yourself a pest. And that's you want to avoid that because once you, and in fact, I would tell you that's one of the reasons why email marketing sometimes gets people in trouble is because most of those systems make it really easy for you to become a pest to a lot of people really quickly. And it ruins your brand. It ruins your reputation, and you end up, when you send out anything that starts feeling like spam and you're pestering people, you are reducing your potential customer base because you're getting blacklisted in their head. I don't want to talk to those guys. They send me a bunch of spam. And so it's very important that you make every email that's like a scalpel, and very precise and very careful with it. It's not. That's why the insider system works. It's not about blasting people with a bunch of content. Next question.
Yeah, I think this is where we're probably a good place to wrap up. So, folks,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm just going to encourage you again to go on and fill out the, many of you have very specific situation. So I would recommend you go to businesswisdom.com. And I also do want to point this out to Jeffrey's point is just kind of sit down and reflect for a second how much a meeting is worth to you. and how long would it take for you to figure this out? I'm suspecting that that you've probably been, if you're on this webinar, you've probably been trying to figure this out for several months, if not over a year. Do the math that if you want to go back to that slide a little bit, Jeffrey, that little one with the napkin. For many
Sure.
of you on the call, from based on what you share with me, that number is very much on the low side. For some of you, for many of you, that number is probably you add like a 0 or 2. And so just kind of put in perspective, how, I mean, and again, keep in mind, this is not something you do once. This is a lifelong skill that once you acquire, you can do this pretty much on demand. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, that's the main reason why Jeffrey has the lifestyle that he has and the freedom that he enjoys. And Jeffrey, one of the things I think you may have glossed over um, is like just the other intangible benefits of this is that you get to work with whoever you want, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the funnest part of it, is that because I can pretty much get anybody involved or get anybody interested in what I'm doing, or I can figure out ways to help just about anybody. I haven't worked with anyone who's irritating for, gosh, decades. Since I started doing this, I've always, if I can tell right away if someone's going to be annoying, I don't have to work with that person. I can just find someone else, because I guess I don't really communicate. It's this incredible feeling of security and kind of power that I'm not ever going to have to put up with the BS from some horrible customer or from some horrible boss. That's really what it's been about. I get to pick who I work with, and as a consequence, I have a whole lot of fun. I enjoy working with the people I work with, and you'll get it when you talk to me one-on-one, because you'll see this is fun stuff. Well, it actually is. It's fun working on this stuff. It's fun showing people. It's enjoyable showing people the hidden strengths that they didn't know they have. It's fun helping people get into the heads of their customers and heads of the media, and being able to go, oh, I understand. That's how they think. And that way you're able to make a connection with someone you weren't able to connect with before. It's really enjoyable. The system is a pleasure to use, because it extends who you know, and it gives you this incredible sense of security that you can get through to somebody whenever you need to.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, that's really the ultimate, peace of mind that you can have, is knowing that you have this ability to secure meetings, because it's so incredibly flexible. And if you're working for somebody, that this is an incredibly in-demand skill, the ability to secure a meeting. I mean, almost everything else can be either outsourced or delegated, but this one skill alone right here, I mean, this, for many people, this is the number one skill that they possess. And so that's what I would encourage all of you to do. So again, folks, one final time, just go to businesswisdom.com, fill out the questionnaire. It'll take you about maybe 5 minutes, if that. And then once you fill out that questionnaire, then what will happen is Jeffrey or one of us will be reaching out to you and help schedule a meeting one-on-one, so Jeffrey can learn more about your business and see how to best customize this framework so you can secure a meeting with anybody you like. That could be a business celebrity, it could be an investor, or it could be basically a media executive to get coverage for your business. So again, businesswisdom.com. And then, Jeffrey, any final words before we bid farewell to these folks who's basically been with us for the last about 75 minutes here?
Yes, I want to thank everyone who stayed for the whole period, and just I want to let everyone know how incredibly grateful I am for all the support that you as readers and as newsletter subscribers have given me over the years. It's humbling, and it's just an incredible experience to be able to have the kind of readers who are so smart and so together and so interested in becoming successful themselves and making other people successful. So thank you so much for coming to this, but also thank you for all the other wonderful gifts you've given me over the years.
Yeah, and a lot of your readers, a lot of the folks on the webinars are reciprocating as well. So we want to definitely thank all of you for being there as well. So on behalf of Jeffrey and myself, I want to wish everybody a great evening. And for those who fill out the questionnaire, just expect basically give us a day or two to go through all the applications, because we're expecting quite a number of them, and then we'll be reaching out with you with next steps. Okay. So thanks everybody for attending this webinar, And for those of you who fill out the application, we'll be in touch with you in about 1 or 2 business days. Thanks a lot, Jeffrey, for hosting this, and I want to wish everybody a great evening.
Everyone, good night.